So the Western has never really gone away, but somehow a bunch of genuinely great Western shows have. They wrote in, did something bold, and then just kinda disappeared before anyone noticed how good they actually were. And that drives me a little crazy, honestly. Today, we're talking about 6 Western shows, some neo-Western, some classic, some flat-out weird in the best way, that came and went without nearly enough people paying attention. I'll go through all 6, give you my honest take on each one, and just so you know, all the streaming info, where to actually watch these, is pinned in the first comments below this video. Okay, let's get into it.
Your brothers and friends shall be avenged!
Right off the bat, I want to address the thing you're probably thinking, which is, History Channel? Really? And I get it, the brand doesn't exactly scream prestige drama, but Texas Rising is one of those shows that quietly earns your respect if you give it the chance. The angle here is interesting. Everybody knows the Alamo. What Texas Rising asks is, okay, but what happened right after? What did the survivors do? What did the people left standing in that wreckage actually build? That's a genuinely compelling question, and the show pursues it without trying to hand you a clean moral. There are no obvious heroes here. There are no cartoon villains. Just a lot of complicated people caught up in a complicated moment of history, and the show trusts you to sort through it yourself.
Had you witnessed the abominations at the Alamo and Goliad, you'd think differently.
The cast helps a lot. Brendan Fraser, Ray Liotta, Bill Paxton, and then Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who looks like he was born to exist somewhere in 1836 Texas. Every time he's on screen, it just feels right. If you know his work, you know what I mean. 1 season, done. Never really talked about again. I think it deserved more, and if you're a fan of Taylor Sheridan stuff, the Yellowstone era, all of that, this scratches a similar itch, and it came out before any of that blew up. Worth a watch. Now this one is pure style, like aggressively, unapologetically stylized, and I mean that as a compliment. This is spaghetti Western energy cranked up to the kind of level where the cinematography alone is worth talking about. The action sequences are over the top in that very specific way where you can tell everyone involved is having an absolute blast. What I find most interesting about this show is that it genuinely refuses to give you a clear hero. You've got Red Bill and Arthur McCoy going at each other, and the show kind of just lets you sit with the chaos of that. There's no one to fully root for, which sounds like it might be frustrating, but actually ends up being kind of freeing. You just get to enjoy the spectacle. Dominic Cooper is the lead, and if you watched Preacher, another weird stylized show that didn't get nearly enough credit, Cooper doing this kind of unhinged energy in a genre setting is a natural fit. He's good at controlled chaos. Here's the frustrating part. AMC has not officially canceled this or renewed it after 1 season. It's just sitting in limbo, which is almost worse than a cancellation because at least then you know. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen with it, but what exists is worth your time if you're into that spaghetti Western aesthetic.
Everybody got God on their side in the war. Trouble is...
Okay, this one I actually find a little baffling that it didn't break through. 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, won an Emmy, based on a really celebrated novel, produced by Blumhouse. Ethan Hawke in what I'd argue is one of the best performances of his career, and this is a guy who's been in a lot of things, so that's saying something. The story is about John Brown, the real-life abolitionist, a man who was either a visionary or completely unhinged depending on your read of him. Honestly, maybe both. Told through the eyes of a fictional kid named Onion who just gets swept up in everything. And that perspective is what makes the whole thing work. It lets the show be funny and heartbreaking and absurd and deeply human all in the same breath. It doesn't soften history, it doesn't make any of it comfortable, but it finds the humanity in all of it in a way that most shows about this era just don't. I really think if this had dropped on a different platform with more marketing behind it, it would have been a massive conversation. Instead, it won its Emmy and kind of quietly disappeared. It's a limited series, so it's one complete story with a beginning, middle, and end. If you watch one thing from this list, honestly, consider making it this one. And hey, if you're finding shows on here you'd actually never heard of, that's exactly what this channel is for. Hit subscribe. I put out new videos every week, and the whole point is making sure the good stuff doesn't stay buried.
I was 12 when I decided This is what I want to do. And here I am.
Joe Pickett, on paper, sounds pretty simple. Game warden in Wyoming. Crime happens, he investigates it. And if that's all it was, fine, it'd still be a decent watch. But what the show actually does is use that setup to make the land itself feel like a character. There's something about wide-open natural spaces, the way this show shoots Wyoming in particular, that carries this weight and this kind of indifferent menace that I think is genuinely underused in crime drama. Joe Pickett leans into that. The wilderness isn't a backdrop here. It has a presence. It pushes back on people. The show also taps into something really current with its corporate versus wildland tension, and the character of Pickett himself is drawn really well.
Anyone hurts my family, I will kill them.
Can't save everyone.
He's not flashy, not especially witty, he's just a guy who is stubbornly, inconveniently committed to doing the right thing in situations that keep making that harder. I find that kind of character more interesting than the typical crime drama lead, honestly. Netflix has a show called Untamed that goes for a similar vibe. I'd say Joe Pickett does it better, and I say that as someone who didn't hate Untamed. 2 seasons, canceled, and I think it deserved at least one more.
Ladies and gentlemen, in Lincoln, we still have a problem.
Before anyone comes at me in the comments, I know, this is not a historically accurate show. It is not trying to be a documentary. If you go into Billy the Kid looking for a textbook, you're going to be frustrated, and that will be mostly your own fault. But if you go in knowing that this is a show about the myth of Billy the Kid, the legend, the outlaw romance, the cinematic version of that story, then it actually delivers something pretty interesting. Tom Blythe plays Billy, and I'll be honest, I was curious how he'd do after watching him in Hunger Games, where he's playing this cold, calculating villain type. Here, he's doing something different. Billy is charismatic and sympathetic and kind of a mess, and Blythe makes you feel all of that simultaneously.
I knew this day would come.
The production value is legitimately cinematic. The scenery alone is worth something. And the show doesn't just lean on the spectacle. There are real, quiet, emotional beats in here that I didn't expect, and that make the wilder stuff land better. 3 seasons, a complete story with an actual ending, which in the current landscape of canceled shows is kind of remarkable. It finished, it told its story, and it still didn't get the attention it deserved. A fun ride all the way through.
Only be a few days. Autumn.
Royal.
Glad for
And then there's Outer Range, which is the one I keep coming back to whenever someone asks me about underrated TV. Full stop. Not even just westerns. The setup is classic. Ranching family, land dispute, generational tension, all the things you expect from a western about people trying to hold on to something. And then there's a mysterious black void in the middle of the field, and the show just treats it with complete seriousness, and somehow that works perfectly. I'm not being funny. There is a hole in the ground on the ranch. Nobody knows what it is, and rather than making that a joke or a cheap hook, the show uses it to dig into everything the Western has always actually been about. Frontiers, the unknown, what lies beyond the edge of things. It just made that literal, and it's brilliant for it.
Something is coming. Something is happening.
Josh Brolin is carrying a lot of weight in this show, and he does it without making it feel heavy, which is a hard balance. His character is holding everything together through sheer stubborn will, and you feel every crack in that over the course of the series. Imogen Poots comes in and immediately makes everything stranger and more unpredictable in a way I really loved. Canceled after 2 seasons with no resolution, which still stings, there was so much more story to tell. If you haven't watched it, go watch it and then come back and be frustrated about it with the rest of us. Alright, so all the streaming links are pinned in the first comment below. If you watched any of these already, let me know what you thought down there, and if we just added a few things to your list, that's what this whole thing is for. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.